ton of great things. I'm just giving you your walk up, like your build up intro, Scoop. How are you today?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. Here we are, just a single game. It's like tasty, right? It's just you can really enjoy it. But we want to preview the game. We want to talk about all of this, but I have to ask you what you know so far. Big day in NBA news, just like we've had a big week in very important NBA injuries. But I'm going to ask you about the Dallas Mavericks and what is going on in Texas.
A lot. It wouldn't be Dallas if it wasn't big news. Rick Carlisle out as the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. I actually spoke with someone today who did share that Rick Carlisle already had a job lined up when he made that decision. The Celtics are looking like a likely candidate, but there are some other teams that he will consider.
How do you see that as a fit for Carlisle in Boston?
I feel like Rick Carlisle benefits with star players. You saw that in 2011 when they won the championship.
Yep.
I think that Rick Carlisle is in a situation where he can write his own ticket, but I think he's in a similar situation in the NFL that Jeff Fisher was in with the Tennessee Titans, where he just had a long-standing tenure, and it was time to go.
Yeah, it just needs to be freshened up. And also, there were some rifts within him and some of his players. The situation was getting stale. And sometimes it is good to try something fresh. And also there is not enough talent that he's used to working with, and this will give him. But it's very interesting because earlier this week, you had spoken to Mark Cuban on the phone, and this was when this kind of just the dominoes started to fall, right?
Yeah, and I just got a text from my source. He just texted me, "Have you heard Boston yet?" And I said, "Yes." That's what I was hearing 2 weeks ago. So I want to answer your question about Mark Cuban. I had gotten a call about 2 weeks ago. It was the weekend when the Mavs and the
Clippers.
Yeah, it was like that Friday night going into
Okay.
7. So Game 7 was like what, Saturday or Sunday?
Yep.
Person said, "Yo, Carlisle is out." I was like, "You bullshit." They was like, "Nah, he's out." I was like, And then that same night, you were hearing the stuff about Damian Lillard in Portland and all that other stuff. And I tweeted, I said, Jason Kidd will likely get some type of consideration. And then going into that Saturday and Sunday, Kidd said he wasn't interested, removed his name from that list. You look at the Lakers situation, I feel like if they do stick with Vogel moving forward, it wouldn't be fruitful for Jason Kidd to stick around if they give him the extension, because he's going into his third year of his 3-year contract.
You also just brought up Damian Lillard, and word out today is it could be Damian Lillard and Draymond Green playing together in the U.S. for the USA in the Olympics. And if that is so, I feel as if there's going to be some super team conversation, and potentially Draymond Green is going to spend time trying to get Dame to make a different decision about where he plays basketball in the rest of 2021-2022 season.
It's a recruiting trip, I would imagine, just like the bubble was, particularly for guys. For guys like you look at the Miami Heat in the bubble last year. You looked at Victor Oladipo. Miami's where he wanted to go, and that was word around town back during the bubble. And I think that could be something that could take shape, just like the Olympics was a breeding ground for the Miami Heat Big Three with Wade, LeBron.
Yes. And we also saw that when we all got the opportunity, the pure pleasure of watching Michael Jordan's series. Why is the name of it slipping me right now? Which is so bizarre. The Last Dance, because there was the coverage of how they all kind of got into cahoots into the Olympics. And you're right, the bubble is such a funny name, because if you think of the bubble, that was all tampering. I remember when the bubble first happened and you were hearing players were all like sitting together. I'm like, but Jesus, it's just tampering. This is going to be just tampering and team building, and it's a bubble and you can't tamper with a bubble, but they did. So now we look at the landscape of the NBA that has changed so much since we spoke last week, with injuries to players and Chris Paul. What do we know first about Chris Paul COVID protocols?
I haven't heard anything in the last few hours. The last I heard was the debate upon whether or not he actually did get vaccinated or not. I know that, just what's going on in the world, and the conversation of whether or not you can still contract COVID even after being.
Sure, we're seeing it with baseball players. We are seeing it with people who are getting tested regularly. But the thing is, most people that have been vaccinated aren't testing anymore. So we're not getting the absolute numbers what we need. Now, it's going to be interesting in New York because when they open Broadway, they're still going to do rapid tests for everybody coming in. And I think that's going to really show us some true numbers. But right now, we're only seeing it. There was also a talk show host, I forget his name, but there have been people that are in a business where they are testing them once or twice a week. They've been vaccinated and they're still carrying the virus.
Yeah, so I think I want to be careful with that. I have
sure.
But
CP3 has been such a piece in so many ways. Now, look, he's also a good bench coach. I mean, he can motivate these players, but they really do need him. Missing out on his, 27, 30 points a game is going to have a huge impact. And then let's talk about tonight. We got Harden back, but we don't have Kyrie. We've got the Nets taking on the Bucks, and this series turned out to be a lot more interesting than you and I expected. I think we both said 5. You knew the Bucks were going to win last Thursday night, which I'm going to give it to you right there. You were correct. You were so correct. I was still on the fence. I'm going to give you credit. I was still on I think the Nets are going to sweep this, okay? I was a bit wrong. But let's look at tonight. Are we going 7 in this series? Because if the Bucks can take it at home tonight, we get that balance back. Then we get for everyone else who's resting at home right now, waiting for a series to start, they're loving right now. The Suns loving life right now. What do we see tonight? We got this game. Let me pull up the lines for you right here. Total points is 220, so it's pretty high even without Kyrie Irving. It's plus 170 for the Nets to take the win, minus 200 for the Bucks to take the win. The series is 3-2 right now with Brooklyn leaving. This is a win or go home situation, even though they are home for the Milwaukee Bucks.
I'll tell you what, I feel like when the Nets lost that game to Milwaukee, the second game, not so much the first game. So we're talking last.
They evened it out, yeah.
And then the next game was like Sunday. I spoke to someone within the organization who felt like they got too much rest from Thursday.
Out of rhythm, yeah.
I feel like they got it was like that week, a couple teams got a couple extra days of rest. I can understand losing that game Thursday in my mind because, like, when you look at home games, guys are used to coming from home, being in their rhythm, but then you're in a situation where you fly to the next venue or the next arena, next city, and then you're getting used to the fans, you're getting used to the hoop. Like, it's like baseball when you're hitting home runs, like every peak and valley is different. But I think that game 4 was a bit of a distraction because you had so much going on with the security issue. Going on with...
But you know what? I understand completely the NBA and their position on this. But I also understand that players have started to bring security to protect them maybe from fans. But this was on the court. Did he overstep in your opinion, Scoop?
I want to clarify a couple things. One, that security, the gentleman that was on the bench, the Nets had hired additional security starting in 2019. And that gentleman was brought in upon the request of KD. However, he started out with DeMarcus Cousins actually in Sacramento and found New Orleans, and then came to Golden State, and he built a relationship with Kevin Durant. And I think in this instance, when you step on the court like that, a lot of security guys step on the floor to it's almost like the Jerry Springer show or a reality show on VH1. Their mindset is just to get on the floor and protect. And I think that his loyalty in that situation to KD, but also the level of just never necessarily being in that fracas potential type of situation before was so new. And I think that he was doing his job, but I think the angles in which you looked at it also, the bumps look more dynamic than they actually were.
For me, I can see it really off the court, but I feel like a buzzer should go off on their shoe when it's just other players and it's on the court. I feel like there should be like this invisible force field that's like, hey, you can secure all the perimeter around this. It's also an insurance issue. There's a lot of issues there, and I understand it all, but boy, did it make a kerfuddle, right? it was such a big talk of the next day.
Well, I can tell you that the Bucks did call the league office. The Bucks were calling the Nets, and they were very upset with the situation. And ultimately, I think that those 2 days off gave a lot more people things to talk about also. Like if it was a day in between, I don't think that it would have been such a conversation. But
You're right. You're right. You're completely right.
The storyline kept carrying on like its own. That's just my thoughts.
And also when the storyline keeps carrying on in a situation like this, what we see is different angles of the camera and all of these other things. We're getting so much footage that it almost can look like it's more than it was. Because it might have been, it might have been 10 seconds, but when you get to start watching, 30 clips of 10 seconds from different angles, it looks a lot worse. And look, I can understand it. It's like in baseball when they clear the dugout. Like, listen, you just want to be dealing with your players and try to separate them. Any additional people in that scenario. So that's something that's still going to be sensitive. And here we are tonight. Are the Bucks going to even it up? And are we going to get an extra night of this series? Or do you think the Nets are going to take the win tonight? You think it's over tonight? So you're not worried about not having Kyrie. You feel that James Harden is strong enough back in his rhythm. I mean, the other day was so amazing. You wake up in the morning, Harden is still on the injury report. Then you go an hour, and next thing you know, he is available so he can do shoot around, right? He was upgraded. Then by the time the game starts, he's at shoot around. I'm like, well, this really escalated fast. I mean, it's great that he's able to power through it because there's got to still be some pain tolerance there. But are you surprised that he came back like this? Or do you think he'd just been laying low, thinking the team was going to do it? He was going to have full juice by the time they needed him again.
Not only were those 2 days off, between 2.5 games off, good for the Bucks, they were also good for me on my phone. And what I will tell you is that the thought process was that they were looking to hold James until the next series.
Okay.
When he ended up playing in Game 5, it surprised myself based off of a few different conversations that I had, mainly because that injury usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks to recover from.
Yeah.
When you watch James in Game 5, James was kind of tentative. Like even shots where he had the ball and like he move off the screen and pick and roll and they would pass the ball back to him, he wasn't charging to the basket, he was taking jumpers. Healthy James Harden wouldn't have done that.
Well, also, you got to remember something. They're definitely giving him some shots for pain, and we don't know what else he's taking to inflammation, pain, of those things. So when you're an athlete and you're so used to feeling a certain way, everything really clicks. You add some medication, even you're sick, you take medication, you don't feel the same. Like sometimes you're on your computer, things don't sync up as quickly. I could see it. You can also see it by the fourth quarter starting to really wear off and the pain starting to slow him down, not just making him able to do the shots that he normally does. Now he's probably going to be sorer tonight than he was the other night.
The Nets' saving grace was Jeff Green. 27 points, set a Nets career record coming off the bench and scoring those 27 points. James Harden, 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists, an NBA record. And I'm mad because he missed that one free throw in the
could have been 50.
I was pissed. As my uncle said, I was pissed off me on all levels of festivity. And I feel like the Nets, they're going to have to repeat it, but this is what I'll add, Lisa. When I look at the Nets and what they did in Game 5, I think this was an exercise in futility that said the Nets don't have to have their second or third star.
We saw that all season.
But you saw James Harden's body, but as far as his normal contributions,
sure.
But even when one guy was out, you still had at least two. The only time you saw one star really stand out like that was last season when Kyrie was on that team. He ended up not finishing the season.
So you are taking the Nets and you are calling this good night. That's it, Milwaukee. You get to go to bed tonight. You don't have to set your alarm clock tomorrow morning, my Bucks players, because you, my friends, are done in this series. The total points for tonight at Bovada, everyone, you can use my promo code. It's Lisa250BV. 220 Where are you going here? You going with the under or the over? How hard can the Bucks fight, and will they just throw in the towel in the fourth quarter?
I think they're going to fight. I just think that you can't settle for jumpers.
Yeah.
I remember going to a small Division III college in St. David's, Pennsylvania, right down the street from King of Prussia Mall.
Oh, I love that mall growing up. It was a big trip for us. Like once every couple of months, we get to go to that mall, and it was such a big deal.
Exactly. I remember in games, the coach yelling, "Yo, if you live by the three, you die by the three." And the Bucks are too big to just be selling for fall-away jumpers like that.
Yeah. That
was what was really pissing me off in Game 5.
KD going 35, 10, and 10 tonight. That's from Jay Winning. Jeff, our friend, is also calling this series. Good night. It is over. The Nets are taking the win. He's also got the total points for the over, so we get a little juice right here. I'm going right there as well. I think the Nets will take this win tonight, and I definitely think this will be a total. So total over 220. You're going with the same thing. Let's move on to tomorrow night, the Sixers-Hawks. I mean, yes, one of it was Jay Whitting that said, please give Trey his flowers.
Yeah.
We're giving him his flowers, but tomorrow night we've got the Sixers up against the Hawks. Total points right now is 221.5. Sixers. Embiid's another one, really wearing down, trying to play through that injury.
I mean, when you look at the fourth quarter, and Seth Curry and Joel Embiid were the only two Sixers to score.
I know, which is so sad.
If I'm not mistaken, Ben Simmons had 8, Tobias Harris had 4, Furkan Korkmaz had 8, or the 8 or 6 in that game. It was everything Seth Curry and everything Joel Embiid. Comparatively, when you looked at the stat sheet for the Hawks, everybody was doing their thing. John Collins stepped it up big. Trae Young was going to do his thing, but the big difference maker for the Atlanta Hawks was that in Lou Williams, a former Sixer, drafted a second-round pick in 2005 out of high school. He was definitely big off the bench, 15 points. If I'm not mistaken, he scored.
Sweet Lou pulling it together. You're right, 15 points.
Yeah.
2 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. You can't beat it. And also, Gallinari, who is at times pretty inconsistent, was able to get 8 rebounds up there and 16 points, really contributing as well. But you're right. It was all Embiid. Curry with 36 points. What's got to be cool? Hey, the Warriors have had a great run. And it doesn't mean they're not great players. It doesn't mean Steph is not amazing. How cool is it for Steph Curry to be at home, relaxing with his family, feet up on the couch, watching his brother put up 36 points the other night?
Steph did it for Steph for all these damn years. About time they do a reverse.
Yeah, you're so right. So this one right here, again, when we look at this series, the Hawks lead the series 3-2. We've got this game tomorrow night. Are the Hawks going to walk away with it and take advantage of the Sixers so that they can just get an extra day or two's rest?
I think it's going to go 7, Lisa.
You think this one's going 7?
I think when you look at the games that the Hawks have won, you look at game 1, it's been both teams have just given up big leads.
Yeah.
When you look at game 1, I think the Hawks were up by like 25 or 30
yep.
points. Sixers only lost by 2.
I know. What's the sense of even getting this big of a lead if you're not going to run with it, right? It's a mental thing. Like, you cannot get comfortable. Jay Winnings doesn't want it to go 7. Scoop says it's not going to go 7. He's looking at the Sixers-Hawks game tomorrow night. He thinks Atlanta's going to win the game, finish the series. Total points on this one, 1.5 points higher than tonight. It's 221.5. You going for the over or the under tomorrow night in the Sixers-Hawks game?
Under.
Oh, because you don't think the Sixers can do it. And you just look, the Hawks playing both sides of the court. Great defense. Embiid, he's kind of unstoppable until the third quarter, like you said, wearing down and not getting enough contribution. This has been a great series, but I think we underestimated the Hawks because of all the star power that we've witnessed on the 76ers.
In order for the Sixers to be successful, Tobias Harris can't have a game like that.
I know, 4 points. You and I have bragged about Tobias. This reminds me very similar of our New York Knicks, and how well, you're going to give me his name right now. It's slipping me.
Oh.
Most
Julius Randle.
And then the playoffs came, and he had some really dark games where it was like not being able to get it done, not even really facilitating. Like, it upsets me if Harris, hey, look, sometimes you have the hot hand, sometimes you don't. That's when you stay under the rim. That's when you fight for rebounds. That's when you try and get assists out there. That's when you figure out who on your team does have the hot hand. You make it happen. Putting up 4 points, he's had such a great season too.
Yeah, he to me, particularly in game 1 against the Wizards, he defined himself that from the beginning. And I feel like when you look at what he's done in the series, I think he's had one off game, but that doesn't mean that could continue. I just think that this is going to be a motivational tactic to get them to do what they need to do. I also think that people aren't giving the Atlanta Hawks enough credit.
I agree.
And I
agree.
Look at the Atlanta Hawks, they remind me of the 2004 Detroit Pistons when they played against the Lakers, and people just thought that the Pistons got lucky. They didn't get lucky. They were just that good.
Yeah.
He had an off game. Oh, he just had an off game. No. Tayshaun Prince was taking care of business defensively. So I think with the Hawks, if they find a way to beat the Sixers, I got to start respecting the Atlanta Hawks because they're doing something special.
Yeah, the Hawks have been in the same situation as the Phoenix Suns, not really getting the credit that they deserve. And now we're getting to see it through a long season. I mean, how many people at the beginning of the season put it all down on the Lakers that they're going to repeat? And the Suns and the Hawks weren't even part of the conversation. The second game of the night, so glad on a Friday night we get 2 games. Because it's Friday night, I can stay up late and watch. I don't have to watch it in the morning. Got the Jazz and the Clippers going on. Total points on this one is 219.5. Right now, the Clippers lead the series 3-2. Please do not tell me this is all going to get done this weekend and we're not going to have any more of these series because I'm enjoying watching these players just fall apart.
I'd like to see it go 7, but I think even how the Clippers won is going to be very interesting to see how the Utah Jazz recover from that specifically, because it wasn't just Paul George putting on an offensive clinic. He did total a triple-double.
He sure did. Nice 37 points for him, but it was also Mark Morris, 25 points, Jackson, 22 points. Even Mann put up 13 points. Batum didn't really give him much at all, but it all helped.
So when you look at Paul George defensively, of his 16 rebounds in that game, 13 of them were defensive rebounds. He also got a block. He also got 2 steals. When you look at Reggie Jackson from that perspective, hit 2 big threes, if I'm not mistaken, in that game.
Yep.
You also look at Terrence Mann's dunk. I mean, did you see that dunk on Rudy Gobert?
Oh. I don't know how you get one over like that, but I want that in a reel when we go, because I like top plays of the week. You could give me 50 of them. You don't have to just do 10, everybody. You can give us 50 because I like watching them, because it's amazing. The Kawhi dunk the other night, OMG. I mean, Kawhi. Now what do we do? Are we concerned about Kawhi?
You definitely have to be concerned about Kawhi because he and Paul George are a tandem. I mean, like when you go to see the Clippers play in arena, you don't go just to go see Paul George. You don't just go. They're Batman and Robin. They're Lisa Ann and Scoopy. They're packaged.
Yeah, they're just like us.
There you go. And I feel like at the end of the day, you do miss him. You miss him from a defensive perspective.
That's exactly it. And also, you miss the savvy that he has because he's gone that far, right? You miss that championship experience as well, even though we've seen it, but the injuries on very important players this week were devastating. There was this one morning where I was like, please let it stop. You're catching up on everything that's going on, all the updates on x-rays and everything else, and you're hoping that it's like, maybe it's not as bad as you think. You're like, please let it stop. We don't have enough then of Chris Paul news. Like, there was so much. Embiid saw that Kawhi dunk during a press conference and said, wow, and it was so cute. It was. I saw it. They kept replaying. Thank you, Jazz Johnson, for bringing that up. It was just so cute. So you are saying that this series is going to be over tomorrow night. Clippers are going to take the win over the Utah Jazz at home at Staples Center. Total points right now, 219.5. What's it going to be? The under or the over?
The over.
I think so too. This is a low score. I do think getting in on the over right now. is going to be interesting because I think this line will move. You know, we've got a whole day for more news to come out as well, and that can sometimes change things. But I like it. I like it a lot. I like what we've been seeing here. I mean, here we are at this point of the season, and we're now getting the news. You know, it's kind of like when football season starts to end, it becomes the coaching carousel. It becomes, you know, movement and where you think pieces will fit. What other trade talks are you hearing about right now that are interesting for us to think about? Because pretty soon you and I can start previewing some futures for next season, win totals for teams. You know, we can just really look into the future. And when you do that, you have to look at new pieces landing on teams that could really be an asset.
Pay attention to the Los Angeles Lakers as it relates to potentially bringing in Russell Westbrook and or Bradley Beal in the offseason, whether that's a sign and trade, whether that's just outright, particularly with the news of Scott Brooks not staying with the Washington Wizards. But I think that if one of those two do decide to leave, I think it's a more of a plausible argument that it's Russell as opposed to Bradley Beal. I
think Russell would be a great fit in LA too.
From LA, has a good LeBron James.
Yeah.
Fit the needs. You look at the Lakers' offseason, particularly with Alex Caruso being an unrestricted free agent. You look at Montrezl Harrell, who does have a player option. You look at Dennis Smith, as Byron Bond said in that situation. Dennis Smith doesn't seem like he fit the best with the Lakers, and I'm not saying that just because Magic Johnson said it, but
right.
The other piece of the puzzle is Kyle Kuzma. I know that last trade deadline, the Sacramento Kings were one of the inquiries.
They were one of the contestants that wanted to make him, take the move. And look, right now, to me, he's not consistent enough to be on LeBron's team. He's had some moments, but when you look at him, he needs a new environment. Sometimes you see players like we've seen with Julius Randle who move around and then you almost forget about him. Tim Hardaway Jr. is another one. You almost forget about him because they move around so much. And then all of a sudden you realize, hey, something's really working here. And we can no longer look at a player in his 7th or 8th season and just say, oh, he wasn't good there. He's probably not going to be a good fit. You just never know. And Kuz could really come to life. So I'd like to see those pieces. I'd love to see Westbrook in LA. But we've got the Nets winning tonight and ending this series. Total points at Bovada is 220. We're going for the over. Tomorrow night, we got the Hawks also ending the season. Teardrop for the poor Philadelphia 76ers, who I really wanted to see go all the way. You realize the 76ers, me growing up in Easton, Pennsylvania, were the first team that I got to see play professional basketball. My first time going to a basketball event other than college games was, of course, to see the Globetrotters. Because, parents had to take you to see the Globetrotters. So much fun. But 1983 was the year. It was a monster team. And guess what? They won it all. And I believed that they were going to be good forever.
The Spectrum.
The Spectrum. It was still the Spectrum. Yep. Before they took that down, it was still the Spectrum. So, and then we've got the Jazz and the Clippers. The Clippers are going to end this series. Total points 219.5. We're going for the over.
Yeah.
Will you be watching any golf this weekend? There's been so much buildup. The drama with pairs, putting Bryson DeChambeau with his nemesis. The build-up's been really good. I know you're not as into it, but one day I'm going to tempt you, and you're going to find the joy. And you're going to love golf because it is fun for everybody to bet on, because you got to commit. You really got to commit. You got to watch. And the last day is always where most people watch, but I kind of like to have it as a good backdrop. I'll be listening to sports radio, have the golf on, because you don't really need to hear them talk. If something good happens, you can just now go back and listen. But it's a ton of fun. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Scoop, what do you got going on? What's on your social media right now that you want to share? What interviews do you have coming up?
I got a special Father's Day video package that I did that'll drop on Father's Day. Shout out to all the fathers out there. I have something that I did with 2 fathers of NBA players and just my writing. What about you? How's the 30 questions going?
30. We're 16 days in, or is it the 17th today? It's weird when you do something every day for 30 days. It's the 17th, so I'm cutting down. It's something to do something for 30. I think when I started doing it, I didn't think about it, but it's been so much fun because I've gotten to know everybody. Today was, what's the dumbest way you've ever been injured. And there were just great stories about, you know, like a stupid thing you do. You just trip over something, but you break your leg. Like, you know, those kinds of little crashing your bike. And it was, one guy said he had a Superman cape on. He was a kid. He had just got his bike and he was riding his bike and the cape got caught. And then I said to him, like, you must not have felt like Superman anymore because Superman wouldn't have gotten caught. You know, it's been fun. Really a great way to kick off the summer, and everything is great over here. I'm excited to watch the game tonight. I'm excited to be chatting with you some more. And everybody here, thank you so much for following us. Make sure you look for the Father's Day event that you're going to see dropping at @scoop_B. I'll make sure I retweet it. And great spot last week on ESPN as well.
Thank you, man. You're doing your thing. And
You're doing your thing.
YouTube, she's doing her thing.
Everybody have a great rest of your day. And thanks so much for joining us right here at Bovada. Bye.